Today, we're looking at 10 different endgame players. The first endgame player we're taking a look at is the player who only plays the space. If you're unsure what the space is, it's essentially when the moving zones opens up on either of the sides, and you decide to play that open space. A famous player that played the space to perfection was Reverse 2K alongside Mero and Day. The pros of playing this way in endgames is that you're gonna have one side of the moving zone all for yourself, and you'll essentially be on the dead side. So it's great if you have good map management. However, a con is that it's much harder to get refreshes if you play the space compared to if you play pretty much any other style. The reason playing this way worked so well for Reverse, Mero, and Day is because Mero and Day are killing machines. Even though difficult, Mero and Day were able to find refreshes few others would. Moving on to the second type of endgame player, we're gonna be talking about tarp followers. People who stay far behind the moving zones and look for pre-built tarps to reuse so that they can save their materials. These kinds of players usually have an incredibly good average placement in the tournaments they play, but get relatively few kills. The risk of following tarps is that you can get stuck on the back edge of the zone if you get spotted. The potential reward, however, is that you not only get a free rotate into one of the moving zones, but quite often you can also get 2 eliminations if the 2 players front tarp have bad awareness. Following tarps is something you can do in every ELO lobby, as it's an unexpected play that very few people end up doing. The third way some but very few players play endgames is going all the way frontage in the first moving zone, then pre-editing from the front of a team's tarp. This strategy isn't used by many, but in the right scenarios, it can be a game-winning strategy. One downside to this strategy is all the mats you need to invest in order to go for the pre-edit play. If you get unlucky and don't get 2 free eliminations, you're very bad off going into the second moving zone. The great thing about this play, however, is the fact that you go for a play so early on that both you and your duo will probably be 5-5-5 going into the second moving zone, as the players you're pre-editing on will most likely have a lot of mats. If you pull off this play, you should easily be able to get a top 2 placement in the game you find yourself in, as you can simply just play your mats and play it safe. Another con is that this strategy requires quite a lot of duo chemistry. The pre-edit needs to be done instantly when called, because you don't have a long time to execute the play. The fourth way people play endgame is religiously playing Deadside. So earlier I talked about playing the space Deadside, but this Deadside that I'm talking about now is quite different. In first moving, you would play the side where the 50-50 zone was covered all the way by the storm. Then, in the second moving, you would play from all the way off the top of the first moving circle. And in third moving, you would do exactly the same. This way of playing is insanely good in the second and third moving zones, and if you can perfect it, you will become a better competitive player. If you have the mats to play Deadside second and third moving, you'll have some of the easiest rotates of your life. The only con of playing Deadside is that it requires quite a lot of materials, which again means you need to have good mat management. In addition to that, getting refreshes in second moving can and sometimes will be tricky, but if you make it to third and fourth moving, it stops being a problem. If there's one thing I would recommend really learning from this video, it would be this: how to play Deadside second and third moving. Coming to the halfway point of today's episode, we have padding on height. Padding on height is actually a really good endgame strategy. Most players who pad on height do it in the second moving zone. What's important when padding on height is focusing on building up rather than fighting the current height. Of course, there are exceptions if the players up there are completely clueless. Then, of course, you can easily get a kill and then just simply claim height. But as a ground rule, you should just focus on establishing and building over the current height team. When you're above them and you've claimed height, then you can start applying pressure downwards and getting damage off. Taking 100+ damage since you're fighting height will minimize your chances of actually getting it. So think about that when going for height. Is it worth fighting my opponents, or can I just build over them? Of course, there are a few cons to this strategy. Most of the time, you don't even get a pad. So having this as your only strategy probably won't get you far. In addition, you need quite a few mats in order to build over height, especially if you meet someone like me. When I'm on height, I'm not giving it up. I'll build fight you to the sky limit in order to keep it. So keep that in mind if this is what you want to do. The sixth way to play endgames is storm playing. And I know what you're thinking. Storm playing? I haven't done that in ages. Well, Kami and City have started the trend yet again, especially if they have splashes. What they do is they both go deep into Storm and play very close to each other, flank height for far in the zone. This is a great way to consistently win games if you have the needed heals to go for the play. The 7th way to play endgames is by instantly dropping to the low ground the second the 3rd moving zone pops. Obviously, this playstyle requires that you firstly get awareness over how it's looking in the endgame you find yourself in. You can't just always 100% of the time drop down to low ground when the 3rd moving zone pulls. But it is a very good ground rule to follow if you want to take low ground. Low ground now with strong SMGs requires a high level of awareness and fighting ability. All of the scuffed players in your game will drop down to low and psycho you, so it's absolutely crucial that you're able to hit your shots and have good awareness. Dropping low ground can be insanely good for high kill games, but as we all know, it rarely wins them. Moving on, we of course have to talk about playing under height, or in other words, just playing high layers. Playing high layers usually means you patiently wait for a height play. The most popular player to play this way is probably Jack from NA East. Playing very high layers or second height works if you have great map management, patience, and preferably when there's not a good team on height. One massive con of playing high layers is the fact that getting refreshes is much harder than on any lower layers. I feel as though playing this way is really good for opens tournaments like FNCS Opens because there will rarely ever be anyone good on height. And as a result of that, you can really easily claim height as soon as they make a big mistake. The second to last way to play endgames is by playing frontage at all times and going for pre-edited floor and stair dropdowns. This way of playing is highly underrated, especially now in this SMG meta like I've been talking about earlier in this video. Dropdowns are actually easier than ever, but for some reason, most people don't seem to play them as much as before. If you play frontage at all times and are quick on zone swaps, you can easily go for 3 to 8 drop-down opportunities in the span of the first moving zone and the second moving zone. The reason drop-downs are so incredibly good is because you pre-box where the loot is gonna be, so it's essentially zero risk, unless you have ambox level aim. Then you might find yourself dying in some of the battles. But pre-edit dropdowns is really something I believe we're gonna see more and more in future tournaments, so I would recommend practicing them as much as you can. The 10th and final way of playing endgames I'll be covering in today's video is the half-zone sprint strategy. The half-zone sprint strategy is commonly used and perfected by Malibuca and Merstach. The strategy basically goes as follows. You want to get halfway to the first or second moving zone, then slow down, box up, and look for refresh eliminations. Then, when the zone is closing up in your box, you want a tactical sprint into the zone. Doing this saves a lot of mats, but naturally, it also demands good positioning and good awareness. Alrighty guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And as always, please go on and have an amazing day. My name is M1K3 Editz. Stay safe and take care.